welcome back to the Speaking in Code. This is episode 5, part 2 of our Anunnaki discussion. Sitting here with Code himself.
Woo.
And the one and only TBD.
Ooh. Ha ha.
Alright, we're already in the heat of it. We're talking Anunnaki. Gods. Buckle up.
You know, I find it interesting. Everything we've read while familiarizing ourselves with these has mentioned them as deities. And there was one thing I was watching where it theorizes that they're actually from another planet and that their planet was dying and they needed gold to help heal their planet or whatever to help get their planet back on track. And they found out our planet had a huge suppository of it, and they came here to get it. Well, they needed people to work, and it said they mixed their DNA with that of Homo erectus, which would be, like cavemen, pretty much, or right before cavemen.
Yeah,
us not quite Neanderthals. Thank you. And so they mixed their blood with Neanderthals to create humans as a labor force to mine gold, and they built temples for the humans, worship them and bring the gold too. And then we were touching on the flood and how different Anunaki are the equivalent of different gods.
Yes.
And part of the thing where Chente was talking about the creatures they created revolted after 40 days and that's why they flooded. Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is when they made their first version of humans, they started breeding with each other and they started revolting, and so they flooded and killed those ones and then restarted and made a new set of humans to mine the gold for them.
Okay.
And I find it interesting, like I said, everything we've touched on so far considers them as deities. They're already here, they were angels or whatever, and then another source says they were extraterrestrial. They were from another planet and they were technically the cause of our creation. Because if you go with what they said, they mixed their blood with Neanderthals to get humans. So would we be here without them?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or would it have taken us longer to get to this point we're at now? Would their blood just sped up our evolution?
Or without their knowledge. If they gave us ideas of digging and fire and all that, those type of things, maybe they were hey, we'll give you these tools to be able to create stuff with. We might not have had Stone Age tools and sticks. Maybe
yes.
They created some version of almost in our way of having power tools, but back then. Yep. So it sped certain processes up.
Well, like you said earlier, the one guy, he was considered the god of pickaxes and ditches. So maybe when we were digging things, we were digging by hand, and he showed us how to use tools and how to make the ditches and use them as irrigation for water to flow. You go as far as the Romans were considered advanced because they were the first civilization with a form of plumbing.
Yes.
That ditches. Mm-hmm. It all comes from that. And earlier when you spoke on Enlil, and he said part of his equivalent was Poseidon and Prometheus. Well, yes. In Greek mythology, Prometheus brought fire and technology and knowledge to humans, and the gods punished him for it. They changed him to a rock, and every day an eagle, which was the symbol of Zeus, would come and eat his liver as punishment. And if you think about if the Anunnaki, let's say the Greek pantheon, the Norse pantheon, the Egyptian pantheon, the Native American pantheon, what if they're all just, I think you'd even mentioned that when we were reading about one of their biologies, what if they're all just based off of the Anunnaki and different cultures called them by different names, and that's why the stories are so similar and vary, maybe depending on region, depending on translation.
Yeah, I definitely like that. One of the things too that they said was, or you mentioned earlier about the mass flood, and that the one guy got mad, so he created this flood to wipe them out.
Yeah.
After the flood, there was multiple, like, not religions, but multiple stories that were spread and told through different nations about how things came about. And I think in the Egyptian god, they had a person that came out of the water that told them what to do and gave them crafts and gave them things like that to be able to help them kind of like rebuild. And same with even, not even over there in like the Middle East and like Norse mythology, all that stuff, but they said that they even did that in Aztec religions and Aztec beliefs, and I think there were some other ones down in South America too.
That makes me think. Remember, there's a theory of Pangea where everything was connected at once. So if we are going that far back, maybe when they came from the other planet, or when they decided to create humans, if they were angels and deities, everything was still connected. So if you think about how close it all would have been, and how easy it would have been to like walk or go by horse to travel, and then the lands separate, maybe because of a great flood, maybe because of who knows what they were doing. And now you have temples in Mexico and Brazil and Africa and I'm trying to think of anywhere else.
Antarctica.
And
there's some that they found in like south of Florida, where it's underwater. There was bigger pyramids than the ones in Giza in Egypt that they found underwater off of the coast of Florida. But
no, it's underwater by our standards. But if we go back a couple millennia before a great flood would have happened, maybe it was at normal level near a coast,
or even a tropical area where it gets the rains and stuff.
And like they said, California the theory is California could fall off in the ocean if they have a big enough earthquake. It's right off the coast of Florida. Maybe there's a little more on Florida, or go back to Pangea. As everything separated, that island had a weak tectonic plate, and then at one point it just and sank right there.
Or sea level was just lower, way
yes.
lower back then. You got any ideas on that, Chente?
No, man, you guys are preaching.
So one of the things that I found out too, I was listening to Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Okay.
And they talk about, they think that the world had multiple cataclysms. So big floods that happened. They think that multiple floods have happened. They think that there were possible mudslides. There could have been like maybe even more volcanoes at the time that caused more like
mention that.
Lava. Like in Italy, they had the one, I think it starts with a P. Pompeo, yeah. Go to those places, and you could go there and you could see people like that are enclosed with the lava rocks.
Petrified, I think would be the word.
Petrified?
Petrified? Yeah, because they're like encased in stone.
Yeah, and it's almost like they got like frozen like by like Medusa. Okay, almost because of how well you could see them and stuff.
Petrified
like
is
it's insane. But how? So I was listening to what's that?
We can't use the word stoned.
Oh yeah, yeah, hardened. No, erect. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, there was a deity of semen, so something was definitely hardened.
Yeah, maybe it dried up. Weren't you mentioning socks the other day?
Oh
yeah,
man,
you talk about concrete.
Oh
so,
yeah.
I mean, leave them babies in a sock for a while.
Oh man, that's good.
So
you cut tile.
What I was getting at with the Graham Hancock and those guys, Joe Rogan mentioned, he goes, I can't believe that the majority of the United States, the majority of North America, was covered by ice, like glaciers and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, it's hard to believe that, majority of Canada, like almost all of Canada, was completely frozen over, and I think
some of it's still frozen now.
And yeah, but I mean, like to the point where like there was nobody living there.
Gotcha.
But they said that So Joe Rogan mentioned, he goes, yeah, I can't believe that it was 200 yards or 200 meters thick of ice during that entire location. And I think it was Graham Hancock, and he's like, actually, that's incorrect. So I thought he was going to be like, there was way less ice or something. He goes, it was the opposite.
There was more?
He goes, it was 2 miles thick. That entire area of glaciers was 2 miles thick of ice. And what's insane was they said that they found a mammoth. I think it was a mammoth or some sort of version of like a rhino that was like prehistoric or like would have lived before that ice age happened.
Okay.
They think that the ice age happened within 10 minutes. They said that they found a mammoth. I think it was a mammoth with an erect penis. And they said that the only way that they would have been able to do that and preserve that, it would have had to have happened within an instant.
Okay.
Almost as if it happened within 10 minutes.
Like a flash freeze.
A flash freeze, which is insane because you're like, maybe a comet happened, which was a cataclysm that caused the Earth to either shift off axis or to maybe put a haze over the sun, which could cause the ice age. But then also, it could have just been in that general area, where the ice age could have happened in all the Earth. Maybe like it got hit with a shift.
Yeah.
A ton of ocean water got sent up there and then instantly froze within that 10 minutes of getting hit and shifted. So then you have an entire area of Pangea, for example, where a lot of the water is now gone, and you're at a hotter climate, you're at a more tropical climate. More of these things could have been an instant of like, get out of heaven kind of thing. Yeah. Like, this is my thinking, like religious wise, God casting the demons or the fallen angels out from heaven, and maybe him even casting them out was another version of like, I mean, if you think about the Big Bang, if the Big Bang was just God's word, and that's that much energy to cause that much light and to cause that much of a shift, and boom,
the energy casting them out of heaven.
For him casting them out of heaven could have been maybe on a much smaller scale, but still to us, because we're not able to understand his power, could have caused something like a paradigm or a shift, or multiple cataclysms, And then not only that, but when he caused the flood, you have all that ice constantly melting. But then they said that there would be areas that would be like huge boulders, right? But because that happened at such a huge shift, there might have been boulders that were just thrown up there and then frozen. And then as the snow and the ice started slowly melting, you had boulders slide off and slam into things. It ripped up parts of the ground. It wasn't like a gradual snow day in Ohio in the spring, and it's slowly melting. You're having things just consistently like shift and slam and move. And I think it was another great force that caused all that stuff too.
Okay.
And then these different deities, which I personally think that they were the fallen angels that claimed to be these things to get people to worship them instead of worshiping God in a way.
Makes sense. Because some people say the temples were used to sacrifice, to make sacrifices, especially like the Aztec temples. They say, like they would take people up and cut out their hearts for the sun god. Well, we're thinking physical sacrifice, but what if it was like spiritual, mental sacrifice? The angels are fallen. Their flaw was they wanted to be on the same level, maybe even better than God, which is why they were thrown out of heaven. Mm-hmm. What better way to put yourself on a level than God than to make yourself a God and make it so people come and worship you? So instead of us looking to God and praying to God, we're going to pray to the sun god, we're going to pray to the wind deity, we're going to pray to the storm god. And now you have these different temples and religions where we are praying to the Anunnaki, who are possibly fallen angels. Mm-hmm. And then also you go back to the Bible, we mentioned the Nephilim before, and that they could be the Nephilim or their offspring of them sleeping, mixing their DNA with Homo erectus, and then later on possibly sleeping with the daughters of man.
Mm-hmm.
And then even maybe creatures, because we talked about the Nephilim were supposed to have slept with animals, and one of the Anunnaki symbol was supposed to be that he was like half fish.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
And that's where some of these like great beasts in mythology come from, and maybe even some of the things we see now. Again, I was saying that one documentary you sent me and I watched was talking about they might be aliens.
Yeah.
And people are always talking about being abducted, seeing saucers in the sky. So if let's go that route, maybe the Anunnaki have come back to visit and see how we've learned to prosper on our own without their knowledge, without their continued advanced knowledge and continued help.
Okay.
Like, we gave you this so far, and then they come back and,
We're just disappointed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's why they don't stay long.
Damn.
Maybe they're not going to the right areas. Like, how often do you hear someone in the city say they were abducted? It's usually someone, like, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I think it's got to be in the middle of nowhere. No fly zones in the cities.
It'd be kind of obvious.
Yeah.
Also, all the bright lights, all the radars, because the big cities, we're worried about each other. Mm-hmm. So maybe we might have enough technology to see them coming to visit us.
Yeah. And I think Chente was mentioned, and like I said before, this is like take 2 of this episode, because we lost the whole thing last time. But Chente, you were mentioning, I think yesterday, how the what was it? What did you call them? They weren't caveman.
Homo erectus.
Yeah, the Homo erectus. Weren't you mentioning like there were certain ones where they changed their DNA and it caused it to like have like weird issues?
Fuck. I don't know if that was me, bro.
Yeah, it might have been TBD.
Yeah, because I was also saying, how we talk about subliminal messaging and then putting stuff right in front of us without us realizing it. The story of Jack and the Beanstalk. He climbs up the beanstalk and there's giants up there. Mm-hmm. And then the little kid stories and Disney stories we watch, they're just giant people. Well, they made a movie a couple years ago, a live action, and the giants have like 6 and 7 fingers, and they have sharp pointy teeth and one eye sometimes. Those are supposed to be side effects from the Nephilim sleeping with humans. Mm-hmm. Also, if we go the Anunnaki route, if they're mixing their DNA with Homo erectus, and like we're not fully evolved yet, we're like somewhere in between a person and a monkey. Maybe we were the original Bigfoot, and they start mixing their advanced DNA with ours, and you get these anomalies. These, what's the word I'm looking for? Dysfunctions.
Okay.
And so you got. And we have 5 fingers. They had 6 or 7. They, instead of 2 eyes, 1 eye. Mm-hmm. Instead of 1 row of teeth, because maybe they were sleeping with animals. Now you have this like 8 foot tall guy with shark teeth in his mouth, and sharks have several rows of teeth.
Mm-hmm. Or it could even be like disfigurements.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Disfigurements.
Where like if they slept with something that was disfigured, where instead of it being like, oh, that's not going to be, like, in the next one. Like, if you have kids, say you're missing a finger, you get a finger cut off, your kids aren't going to have a finger cut off when they're born,
No.
But with somebody that might have a disability of some sort, even if somebody's, like, a midget or something where they're more prone to having another kid, their offspring is supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
Where if they have any of these disfigurements, like, say one of them had, like, messed up teeth, or like had a single eye, maybe that was in its DNA to pass on, where when it actually slept with them, it was able to create more of a multiple Cyclops types ideas, or giants, or things with like shark teeth, where they have like multiple rows of teeth, and to help them.
And then back to the giant parts, with whether we want to call them Nephilim or Anunnaki. Mm-hmm. They're believed to be gods and deities, and usually gods are supposed to be larger than the average man.
Yep.
So you mingle god blood with human blood, and then you get what we consider giants. Think about it. For the longest, the average height of a person was 5'7", 5'8", mm-hmm. And then we have people like me at 6. We have people like
Chente
at like 7 foot tall.
God damn.
You know, we have like LeBron and the Big Show and Yao Ming who were like got to duck under doorways that normal people wouldn't even be able to reach standing on their tippy toes.
Yeah.
But that could be all leftover genes from the Anunnaki making its way down through bloodlines throughout the years because not everybody was disfigured.
Yep.
So, and just like we learned in biology class, some genes are dormant until further down the line. So all of a sudden here in 2023, we got like people tipping the scales at 500 pounds and 7'3" tall.
Yeah.
Could be leftover Anunnaki genes.
Yeah. Then the Greeks had like an island full of giant cyclops, right?
Giant cyclops?
Yeah, like in their stories.
Yes, in the Odyssey.
Yeah.
Odysseus in the Odyssey, Odysseus ended up on the island, and it was full of cyclopses who were all supposed to be like 2 stories tall.
Yeah, they're all tall.
They had to dress as sheep and crawl on all fours because the cyclopses had bad vision. Another disfigurement from mingling blood that shouldn't have been mingled together.
They needed a monocle.
Maybe even inbreeding among the Anunnaki themselves. Remember we were talking about some of them had like, they were supposed to be the 7 main gods, but they shared parents or were had kids with their parents and different things like that. So the Anunnaki were inbreeding among themselves, creating disfigurements. Oh. And those disfigurements passed down as they used new blood to mix with human blood. And that trait just kept carrying on.
Okay. One of the things, too, I was listening to was this woman named Dr. Laura Sanger. I think she's from like San Diego, but she has a book out, and she ties the Nephilim all the way to the Federal Reserve. And she thinks that the Nephilim, and it could have been even like the Anunnaki as well, where they were trying to, like, for example, God put like kind of like people lived very long back in the day, right?
Yes.
And I mean, there were some that lived up to 600 years, I think.
Yes.
And then 300 years, whatever. And ever since, it's like they said that the Anunnaki was trying to contaminate the DNA of humans to make them less than. And what they did was, so imagine you have like an X or a Y, right?
Yeah.
And the 2 points or the 4 points, now you dip those into wax. You dip your fingertip into wax, right? And you have that little coating of wax at the end of your fingertip. Well, that's the same thing that they did with the DNA. They tainted it, so that way, that's why people weren't able to live longer than like max 120 years. Like, that's the oldest I think humans can live nowadays, is like 120 years if you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
And who knows if that's like any like issues, or...
And we say live it as in you're still alive and breathing, but are you mobile?
Yes.
Because being alive and living are 2 very different things.
Yeah.
But that also takes it back to them being fallen angels.
Mm-hmm.
Because who would want to contaminate God's greatest or perfect creation? I can't remember what we're considered. Outside of the people that were cast out because they felt we weren't worthy of God's love.
Yeah.
But the fallen angels. So they, as Anunnaki, if you want to call them that, taint our DNA so we're not as perfect as God wants us to be.
Or we were made in his image, and they go, oh, we're going to mess up that image.
Yes.
We're going to make you think that he's way worse than he was,
Yeah.
Then
to be spiteful,
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're going to kick me out? Well, I'll show you one.
Now you got people that are like dogs. It's like, if the Germans were trying to make that perfect human being, and only breed with Germans, who knows? There might be a lot of people with hip dysplasia nowadays, just like real German shepherds, or like people with sleep apnea, like a pug.
Yeah, I can see that.
So now we're having all these main issues, and we're like, oh, I don't know what's genetically modified. Our GMOs and our food is all jacked up. But it's got to be from my lineage and my family, like they were diabetics. It's like, diabetes is like a thing that just came out probably like in the 70s.
Well, see, that way, again, we talked about them giving us their knowledge, but then now they're gone.
Yeah.
Well, if they took their knowledge with them and we had to relearn everything because they wiped us out and restarted, maybe we knew what it was and how to deal with it, cure it, or heal it. And now, because we had to go the slow path to get back to where we are, it's just a new thing to us, but it's been around for millennia.
Or they're bad, and the bad ones are still in control of everything that we're dealing with today.
I can see that.
You know, I mean, they're coming out with things that are changing our food. You know, flax seeds aren't very beneficial to people anymore.
Really?
Well, I mean, you get the flu, you get a flaxination.
My mind did not break the code.
No, it didn't.
It did not break the code. No. I understand what you're saying now. Okay, that makes sense. Flax seeds aren't what they're supposed to be. Gotcha.
Yeah. Or like foods and stuff, like the food pyramid is like actually opposite of what it should be. Where before they had like mostly grains at the bottom, you know, and it's like, and they had like fats at the top that were very little, and it's like, it should be the opposite where you're barely getting that many grains, you know, and that much like carbohydrates. It should be more fats and more proteins, and fruits and vegetables. Like even your fruits shouldn't be that high as much as they were saying, where like 4 cups of fruit, like who can afford 4 cups of fruit a day? Plus that shit makes you poop.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays,
Which is a
you know
good
what I'm
thing.
saying?
Oh yeah, nowadays everything,
Yeah.
fruit, eggs. But let me take a snowball to cause an avalanche.
Okay. Chente, did you want to touch on any of that stuff first?
Maybe later. I want to see where TBD's going with it.
Okay. Thought for the day. Man can live about 40 days without food, 3 days without water, about 8 minutes without air, but only for 1 second without hope.
Hey, that was part 2 of our episode 5 Anunnaki discussion. We're going to leave you there. Take care. This is Chente the homie.
Teddy Dynamite telling you all to have a good night.
Oh, you're rhyming again. No, this is
Damn, that's good.
Conspiracy of a Dead Man. Stay safe, stay blessed.